Riley's most private thoughts, her fears, insecurities, and things she never dared say out loud, were never meant to be seen. But one careless moment at school, and the entire world saw everything. Riley always wrote in her diary at night. It wasn't just a habit, it was her safe place. A soft pink notebook with a small lock, filled with her deepest thoughts. When the world felt too loud, Riley would curl up in her bed and let her pen do the talking. She didn't have to be perfect in those pages. She could be scared, sad, angry, even broken. She wrote about school, about boys she liked, about feeling alone. She wrote about how hard it was being Kandi Burris's daughter, how everyone expected her to smile, to be strong, to be perfect. Sometimes she even wrote things like, "I wish I had a normal mom. Just for one day." No cameras. No pressure. But she never said these things out loud. Only her diary knew the truth. That morning, Riley rushed to school, grabbing her backpack without checking twice. She had an English assignment due, a personal story. Her teacher encouraged them to dig deep. Riley didn't want to share anything fake, so she brought her diary with her, thinking she'd find something honest to turn into an essay. She never showed the diary to anyone before. It felt strange carrying it in her bag, like walking around with her heart wide open. But she told herself, no one will see it. I'll just look at it during lunch and pick one paragraph. That was the plan. During fourth period, a classmate named Brielle leaned over and asked if she could borrow Riley's bag for a second. Her water bottle had spilled, and she needed tissues. Riley didn't think twice. Yeah, sure, she said, handing it over. Brielle unzipped the bag, pulled out what she needed, and set it back down. Nothing seemed strange. Nothing felt wrong. Not yet. But as the school day went on, Riley had a weird feeling in her stomach, like something was off. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Her private world, the one she trusted, was no longer private. The diary that held her secrets wasn't safe anymore. And soon, those pages would end up in the wrong hands. After school, Riley got home feeling tired but calm. She dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, and grabbed a snack. Kandi was in the studio, so the house was quiet, just how Riley liked it. She went upstairs to work on her homework. That's when she reached into her bag, and her heart dropped. The diary wasn't there. She froze. Her fingers searched again, deeper, faster, more desperate. Nothing. Her bag was empty. Her diary was gone. Panic hit her like a wave. She dumped her books onto the floor, checking every pocket, every zipper. Still nothing. She tried to breathe. Maybe I left it in my locker, she whispered. Maybe it's still at school. But deep down, she knew. She had put it in her bag that morning. And now it is gone. She opened her phone and started texting Brielle. Hey, did you see my pink diary in my bag earlier? No reply. She texted two more friends. Please let me know if you saw a notebook in my stuff. It's really important. Still silent. Then her phone buzzed. A message from a random number she didn't recognize. It had a screenshot. Her handwriting. Her words. A photo of a page from her diary. Her stomach twisted. Then another message came in. Yo, is this real? Then another. Wow, she really said this about her own mom? Riley's hands shook as more messages poured in. Screenshots of private thoughts. Paragraphs she never meant anyone else to read. One post had already been shared to a gossip group at school. People were commenting, laughing, sending emojis. Some were mocking her. Others were just shocked. But none of them should have seen it. She felt sick. How could this happen? Who did this? Why would someone be so cruel? The words she wrote late at night, crying into her pillow, now turned into jokes for everyone to read. Her chest felt tight. Her vision blurred. The safe little world she built in her diary was now wide open. And it was spreading faster than she could stop it. The next morning, Riley didn't want to go to school. She sat at the edge of her bed, holding her phone, her heart pounding. The screenshots were everywhere now, on Snapchat stories, in group chats, even on TikTok. Some kids were making voiceovers, reading her diary out loud in funny voices. Her most private thoughts had turned into a joke. She pulled the covers over her head and wished she could disappear. But staying home would only make people talk more. Kandi noticed Riley acting strange but didn't push her. You okay? She asked gently. Riley just nodded, too ashamed to speak. At school, it was like walking into a storm. Whispers followed her down the hallway. People stared. Some laughed. Others looked at her with pity. One girl passed by and said, Damn, Riley, that diary was wild. Riley didn't answer. She kept her head down and walked faster. When she reached her locker, she saw someone had taped one of her diary pages on it. The one where she wrote about feeling invisible, even at home. Her eyes filled with tears. She yanked the paper down and stuffed it into her bag. Brielle walked over, quiet and unsure. "Hey, I just saw it now. I'm so sorry. This is messed up." Riley didn't respond. She didn't know who to trust anymore. Maybe Brielle was the one who took it. Maybe not. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. In class, her phone buzzed nonstop. One boy texted, "So you like Marcus? Though he was with Jayla." Oh. Another message said, "You hate your mom that much?" Riley felt her throat close up. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run far away. At lunch, no one sat with her. She ate alone, pretending to be busy on her phone. Even the teachers looked at her differently, like they knew too much now. Riley felt exposed, broken and small. Her diary had been her only safe place. And now that place has been destroyed. She went to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and finally let herself cry. Big, heavy tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why me?" she whispered. "What did I ever do to deserve this?" The walls didn't answer. But deep inside, Riley knew this wasn't just about a lost notebook anymore. This was about trust, cruelty, and what happens when your voice is stolen and twisted in front of the world. That night, Riley couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Her phone lay face down on her nightstand. She had turned off all her notifications, the messages, the tags, the videos. She couldn't take it anymore. Every ping felt like another knife to the heart. Downstairs, Kandi sat on the couch, staring at her own phone. She had finally seen what was going on. A friend from the studio had sent her a screenshot. Kandi's stomach dropped as she read the words written in Riley's handwriting. Words like, "I feel like my mom only loves me when I'm perfect," and, "Sometimes I don't even know who I am without her expectations." It was like someone had punched her in the chest. Kandi had no idea Riley was carrying so much pain. And now the whole world knew, before she did. She walked up to Riley's room and knocked gently. "Baby, can we talk?" There was no answer. She opened the door slowly. Riley was curled up under her blanket, eyes red from crying. Kandi sat on the edge of the bed and placed a hand on her daughter's back. "I saw it," she whispered. "I saw everything." Riley didn't move. Didn't speak. "I'm so sorry," Kandi said, her voice trembling. "Not just for what happened, but for not seeing how much you were hurting." Riley finally turned her head. "Why does everyone hate me now?" she asked, voice cracked. "Why did they do this to me?" Kandi wiped her tears. "Because people can be cruel when they're insecure. When they see someone being honest, it scares them. So they laugh. They gossip. But none of that means what you wrote isn't true or brave." "But they made fun of me," Riley whispered. "My feelings are a joke now." "No, baby," Kandi said firmly. "Your feelings are yours. And they matter. And whoever shared your diary without permission, they're the ones who should be ashamed, not you." For the first time in days, Riley let herself cry in her mother's arms. It wasn't the kind of crying that made things better right away. But it was the kind that made her feel a little less alone. Later that night, Riley logged back into her social media accounts. She didn't respond to the hate. But she did make one post. Just one sentence. "What you laughed at was my truth." She hit send. Then closed the app. By the next morning, something unexpected had started to happen. Under Riley's post, "What you laughed at was my truth," people began to comment. But this time, it wasn't jokes or hate. It was other girls. Other teens. Even adults. "Same here. I thought I was the only one. I wrote almost the same thing in my journal last week. You're not weak. You're real." The comments kept coming. Hundreds. Then thousands. People were sharing Riley's words with the hashtag #MyTruthToo. What started as humiliation was turning into something powerful. A movement. But even though the internet was shifting, Riley still had to walk into school. And that scared her more than anything. Kandi offered to drive her, but Riley shook her head. "I need to face this," she said quietly. She packed her books, tied her hair back, and held her head high, even if her stomach was in knots. As she stepped into the hallway, it felt like time stopped. Eyes turned. Whispers swirled. For a moment, Riley froze. But then, something surprising. A girl she barely knew from art class walked up and gently touched her arm. "Thank you," she said softly. "To be honest, you helped me feel less crazy." Then another girl nodded at her from across the hall. Then a boy. Then 2 more students. No applause. No big drama. Just silent, steady support. Still, the pain wasn't over. There were a few snickers. A few people pretending to be her, mocking her words. Some even made fake diary pages and passed them around. Riley tried not to cry. But it still hurts. Later in the day, she found the courage to visit the counselor's office. Not because she was forced, but because she wanted to talk. The counselor looked up and smiled warmly. "I've been waiting for you," she said gently. "I read your post. And I want you to know, you're brave. Not broken." Riley sat down. She didn't have to explain much. The tears came again. But this time, they felt different. Softer. Cleaner. Like a weight was finally being lifted off her shoulders. 2 weeks had passed since Riley's world flipped upside down. The sting of the diary leak was still there, but so was something else, strength. One night, as Kandi walked past Riley's room, she paused. The door was slightly open and inside, Riley was sitting at her desk, not scrolling on her phone, not crying, but writing. In a new journal. Kandi knocked softly. "Can I come in?" Riley smiled. "Yeah. I was just writing something, for me this time." Kandi sat on the bed quietly as Riley spoke. "You know, when my diary got out, I thought everything was ruined. I thought people would hate me, laugh at me forever. But something weird happened. The stuff I was most ashamed of was the stuff people connected to." She looked at her mom, eyes watery but peaceful. "I guess being real makes people feel less alone." Kandi nodded slowly, her voice warm and proud. "You turned your pain into something powerful, baby. That's not weakness, that's bravery." The two hugged tightly. And for the first time in days, Riley let herself breathe fully. Later that week, Riley stood in front of her English class, holding a paper in her shaking hands. She had volunteered, yes, volunteered, to read something out loud. "My name is Riley," she began, voice trembling slightly. "And I used to hide everything I felt. I thought being sad made me broken. But I'm learning now, it means I'm human." The room was silent. Not in a cold way, but in a deep, listening way. When she finished, the teacher smiled. Then slowly her classmates clapped. Not for drama. Not for pity. But because Riley had done what most of them were too scared to do, be honest. The diary that once embarrassed her? It was now a story of survival. A reminder that even when your truth gets exposed, even when your heart feels broken wide open in front of the world, healing is possible. Strength can grow in the cracks. And sometimes, the thing meant to break you becomes the thing that builds you.